Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Dan, and I have a very, very special guest and friend with me today, the owner of HeyDayPDX, a donut bakery up in Portland, and longtime baker. I'd like to welcome to the show Lisa Nguyen.
Hey, Dan. How
Hey,
are you guys?
Lisa. Hey, we're fantastic, especially with kind of what's going on. I really can't complain. How about you guys?
We're doing good. So far, so good.
So so far, so good. Yeah. So I know you've got three boys.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's life like with three boys?
It actually, I'm really thankful that they're at the age that they're at. Right now, they are, in elementary school, so they have to deal with them wanting to be with friends right now. They're actually enjoying being at home, which is a lot of work for me. I'm cooking a lot more meals, trying to balance schoolwork. They're all at different paces in school right now. So just trying to make sure that they're occupied a little bit. We're trying to balance summer out a little bit and try to, ease into summer, and then we're almost done.
Yeah, before you know it, we'll be into September.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Before we get into what you're working on today, take me back a little bit and tell me a little bit about your life before you got into baking.
Okay. I've actually always been a baker. I've baked since I was 9 or 10. So I've always kind of tested recipes, baked for people. It's always been my thing. But I think as, being born from an immigrant family and a refugee family, the hopes and dreams of the child is to, become something more, go to college, get that degree. And I actually I did well in high school, got into college, and just realized college wasn't for me. I took all these classes just to get a degree in something. And I ended up just kind of folding and, went into my counselor and just said, give me the degree that I can get with all these courses. And I ended up with some 2-year degree and an emphasis in science because I was going to become a nurse at some point. And I just ended up just working hard. And I think the working hard got me really far. And so I ended up, working for, I ended up being in the Bay Area, working for a lot of companies and worked my way up to be a merchandiser. But baking has always been my thing. I've always had this weird, oh man, I should have just went to baking school. And so I had my first son, and he was about 8 months old, and me and my husband were talking about it, and I just said, I think I want to try this baking gig, and he was like, you know what, we're in a good position right now, just do it, just do it. We have the time right now, so we should just do it. So I quit my job, my 9-to-5 job, and I actually worked for a Michelin restaurant in Mountain View for about 6 months for free. I had a test in, got in, and I just worked for 6 months. And that was actually the best experience that I've had. I got I kind of did the reverse thing, I went into the restaurant business first, and then I went into baking school. So after 6 months, I realized that, I think I want to go into baking school. And so I went into baking school. It was at San Francisco. It was a program that was actually a free program, but they only limited to 10 people. And you had to basically get in line the night before and stay there and register. And that morning, for some reason, I got up late to register. But I went to school anyways, and I was 19th on the wait list. And so I just kind of just put my name in there, and I was like, you know what, I think my opportunity is missed, and so started kind of looking for jobs again that same day, just in case. And then the next day, the chef called me. She was like, I called all the 19 people, and no one on the wait list wants to come back. So I got the last spot. And I finished that program, that free program. And it was intense. I was living in San Jose at the time, and I had to drive to the Bay Area. Drive to San Francisco. So that was about, 60 minutes, an hour. My class started at 6. I have to be there at 5:45 in the morning. And I did that every day for a year, Monday through Friday. And I had my son still. So, my husband had to do a lot of the heavy lifting and loading and daycare and all that stuff. And in the meantime, I kind of had to really think about what am I going to do with this degree? Like, am I going to really open a business at some point? Probably not. I was much older than a lot of people who are starting businesses, and I already saw what baking life was like already, doing that stage at the Michelin restaurant. So I kind of knew what I was getting into, and I was trying to figure out how can I do that being a parent. You know, a lot of the people that I was going to school with were really young, really ambitious. They wanted to, I mean, we're living in the age of Top Chef and, all these baking shows at the time. And it still is, a hot thing. But there is a lot of grit and a lot of perseverance that goes through it. And I don't think that is reflected so much in this industry. So I finished my degree and then I moved to Singapore. And that was it. I couldn't work for 2 years. so that answered the question.
So, you did mention you kind of do it backwards. And I think, for a lot of people, it's go to school, get the degree and then go into a job. And then they find out they don't like to do it.
Yeah.
But for you, you tried it out. You went to the Michelin Star restaurant and, it was something that you still wanted to do, even having worked at because I know restaurants is like, it's nonstop. It's lots of demands. And so even with that, you decided, hey, I still have the desire to go to baking school. Yeah.
I think for the first time I felt like, like going through college, I wasn't passionate about any of these degrees. I felt like I could finish the degrees and graduate with any degree. And I could just go with the motions and get it done. But I just really didn't feel very passionate about it. And, it was a lot of heartache on my end too, because I was the oldest of my family. And so for me to not get the 4-year degree and to do the unconventional thing, was really hard on me. I don't think it was actually that much harder on my parents, but it was definitely harder on me. And they worried about me, but they also trust me. But I think for me, I felt like a sense of responsibility. And so I think that's where the working hard at wherever I was at. I worked for bad bosses.
You didn't get the Asian mom guilt for.
I think I did. I just kind of.
How could you do this to me?
Yeah. Well, I think I worked hard enough for them to be able to say like, hey, okay, fine, you go your route, and but you made the decision on your own, so you're gonna have to pick up the pieces if things don't work out, right? And I that's how I've always been. I've always just worked hard where I was at, whatever job it was at. I could be a dishwasher and I would work really hard. I think that's just a trait that I have. So yeah, I did. It was grueling. I had a kid at the time, so it wasn't a glamorous job at the time. And I also worked for free. So for the 6 months I was working at the restaurant, I was working for free. So I was just getting experience, and I was just learning from the pastry chef currently. And I've been really thankful that I've worked and had really amazing pastry chefs that I worked alongside. During my school year, I worked for Bee Patisserie, and watching her just run a business and just doing the bakery and stuff like that, I really respected, the chefs that I worked for. And so I wanted to carry that over. Like if I ever became, a business owner myself, like I wanted to make sure that I, made people felt of worth was another thing too. Like it wasn't the product at the end of the day. It's just, how can I make, and I felt this is how I felt like, they treated me, was that, how can I hone into your skill to make you better? And I wanted that too, because at the end of the day, there is a product, but I think especially right now, like people are really acknowledging that like the people behind the product is special too. And so I just kind of wanted to bring that along with my current business too.
So after baking school, you go halfway across the world to Singapore. Tell us what took you there, and you couldn't work. So what did you end up, doing here?
So my husband got a job offer over there. So we went over there for 2 years. And, it was actually the best thing, because at the current time I was currently in the Silicon Valley hustle and bustle. I wanted to create something new. I wanted to be, I kind of started a little catering business while I was going to school and working. And, and I got caught up in it. I didn't enjoy it as much as I actually do now, like with my current position. But so in Singapore, I was kind of forced to just do nothing. I haven't done nothing in a long time. Like you know, I was always felt like I had to be better. I had to do something. I had to work harder. I have to, you know, and for the first time in my adult life, like I was not allowed to do anything but take care of my kids, spend time with my family, and just slow down and rethink like what life because we knew we were coming back to the States. And so I just wanted to make sure, like, I think that time we needed to refocus on what we wanted to do, how busy we wanted to be, which then led us to not move back to the Silicon Valley. And we ended up moving to Portland, which is where I kind of went to school and then started working, and then moved to, you know, so NorCal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it was a good time to just appreciate the stillness and the slowness of life, and kind of realize like what's important and what's not important, and kind of figure out how my business would run if I ever did it again. I think at that time I felt like my opportunity was missed for some reason.
So now you're back in Portland, but you didn't start HeyDayPDX right away. It took you a while. Tell us a little bit about that kind of time in between, and what were you working on, and what were you, doing in the meantime?
Okay. So in Singapore, I had my second son. And towards the end of my Singapore year, I was actually pregnant. So we came back to Portland and had my third son. So I was like, 3 boys at this point. And I totally felt like I was done at this point. Like I felt like entrepreneurship and being out of the Silicon Valley was out of reach at this point. And so, I just was a mom, for the last 3 years. And it wasn't until I was visiting my mom in Southern California, and we were like eating donuts, and she was like, I think you can do this better. And I was like, yeah, maybe I could do this better. I love donuts. Donuts is my thing. Everybody who knows me knows that I love donuts, right? So I was like, yeah, I think I could maybe do it better. I don't know. My mom's like, man, maybe you should. Within that same minute, like 5 minutes later, my husband called, and I was like, hey, my mom just jokingly told him, I was like, hey, mom thinks that I could do this. And he was like, let's do it. And that was it. We just, that was it. That was in like the summer. That was like last summer in July, and September from till when we opened, it was just hit the ground running. And then this is where we are now. So.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about HeyDayPDX. What kind of donuts they offer? Okay. And, do you guys have a store, or how do you guys sell these donuts?
Yeah. So right now we are, because of COVID, I actually think it's been a blessing for me. I think it kind of, I felt like at first we were supposed to launch in March, and then the whole thing happened and everything was pushed back. And at some point I was like, I don't think this is time, and I think for me as personally, I'm just not ever really confident in the things that I do. I know that I love what I do. I just don't know if I have to push myself a little bit harder to convince myself to do something. And so May comes around, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to launch and do it in the middle of this. And so I did it. And, our donuts are nothing new. Everybody knows what the mochi donut is. I try to steer away from the mochi donut because I feel like it's a rice flour donut. It's made with rice flour. And so I like to change it up a little bit because I feel like every Southeast Asian country has a rice flour dessert, and rice flour is used in a lot of Southeast Asian desserts in different forms. And so I don't think that it, like the mochi donut actually is appropriate for it, and so I try not, people still call it mochi donut. I don't personally call it the mochi donut. I just say donut, and I just say, we use a rice flour.
Okay.
So I do the fried version, which is what everybody's seen. It looks like the Ponde ring from like Mr. Donuts. Everybody's seen the round donut. I also do a baked version that has no gluten. And that is pretty much the dessert, I think, for as Vietnamese person, like we grew up on it. We grew up on a lot of rice flour kind of desserts with coconut milk and things like that. And so, but I wanted to stand out because I knew that it wasn't something that was new, to the US. I'm a big advocate for using things that are in season, and I'm a big advocate for using things fresh and baking things from scratch. So everything I make is from scratch. So I don't go to the store and buy, you know, Oreo cookies and smash them up and put them on a donut. Even though, I mean, that's okay for other people, but I just really prefer to make my own cookie and put it and make that chocolate cookie, you know? So I do that with some of my donuts. I do, right now, I make my own sprinkles. So I don't even buy sprinkles.
Yeah, so everything's made, I mean,
yeah, everything's made
everything's, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's no natural, so I don't use food coloring at all. So everything that, like the sprinkles will be just natural dye using beetroot or, you know, just natural dyes. I feel like that's something that I want if my kids are going to eat a donut, like I want to at least make sure that it's, you know, it's made well, right? Yeah. It's a special treat. I want people to make sure that they feel good about eating it, you know? And I put a lot of love into it. And so a lot of my flavors are, you know, in and out because of how fresh my ingredients are. I don't make things in bulk. You know, once I'm done with it, I'm done with it until I can make it again, you know? So I make my own, like my s'mores, I make my own marshmallows, I make my own graham cracker crumble, so everything's from scratch. And I think that's what sets us apart. And I think people can taste the difference, you know, when people actually eat it. I try to marry the connection between culture and introduce people to new flavors, things that I grew up on, and how can I make this dessert that I had as growing up into a donut flavor. So I think that has, you know, gotten a lot of attention. And I just really like to, you know, I want to provide an experience for people, you know, because I grew up eating donuts with my dad. And so that was like very special. And so I just wanted to make that special for other people too. So
you mentioned, you know, connecting cultures to the food. So can you dive a little bit deeper? Where do you find inspiration, right? Because I was talking to Andy Nguyen, if you know who he is, he owns After's Ice Cream, right? So I interviewed him, and he says, hey, what he likes to do is actually just loves to travel and then just eat and go, finds inspiration. Like, oh, I think I can do this better, or I can do this differently in a different method. So how do you find, you know, your inspiration to creating donuts?
Yeah, the same thing. I mean, I have such a mental, we lived in Singapore for 2 years, but we traveled everywhere. You know, we went to Vietnam, we went to Indonesia, we went to Malaysia, we went to, you know, all these Southeast Asian countries, and, you know, we went to Japan and Korea. And I just remember the food that we ate. And I keep thinking about like all these flavors that are being used. And then, you know, the awesome thing is just how connected these flavors are, you know, like, and how these ingredients are so connected. And being in Singapore was such a good hub for all these other, you know, for everyone around us to come in and bring their food flavors there, you know. So I can still think about all those places that I went to, all those flavors, and I love doing that, you know. I try to look up at like other countries that I've been to other than Asia too, you know, like we've been to Spain, and what did they use there, and how can I recreate that and respect that, you know. I mean, like I want to be able to honor it and respect, you know, what they had to offer. And not
does that mean a paella donut is coming?
Probably not.
Paella seafood donut.
No, I mean, I just did a pop-up with a girl who does Mamadou. She does Vietnamese vegan food, and so she wanted to collaborate somehow. And so I just made donut holes, and I created like a mayo, like a spicy mayo sauce, and she made like a vegan porkless floss, and we just topped it off, and it actually was amazing, you know. And so it's kind of like, yeah, I mean, if I can find a savory dish that I can respect and not like mess up, and, you know, keep it true to what it is, I would love to do that, you know?
Yeah. So, you know, you talk about seasonal, so probably, you know, around the fall, you'll do pumpkin, and maybe around Christmas, you'll do something around eggnog and St. Patrick's Day. So, you know, aside from those, holiday type donuts, where are you finding, like, in maybe the last 6 months that you've been doing this, like that's been in season that you've offered to your customers and they really liked?
So right now, strawberry was really big in Portland, and you can actually go pick them here. Yeah. So we just go pick them. So I just picked a whole bunch of strawberries and blueberries and raspberries from a local farm, and I've made there's two strawberry items that I do. Is a strawberry shortcake, which I make like a strawberry crumble on top. But then I also have done a strawberries and cream and people have loved that. It's because when you use fresh things, fresh ingredients, you can totally taste the difference. Like it doesn't, you can actually taste the strawberry. You can actually taste, whatever fruit you're using at the time. There's going to be time in season where, I can't use any fruit. And so I kind of have to make sure that I, hone in, and, I'm like working with herbs right now, and how I can marry the two together. And right now, like I've even infused like cinnamon sugar with citrus, and and so it's not like just tossing cinnamon sugar on top of stuff. I'm like using Saigon cinnamon, and I'm using like citrus and things like that to elevate it a little bit. Because I feel like those things can be elevated.
Now, all your donut flavors so far, have they been like on the sweet side, or do you also do savory?
I haven't done any. The only savory one I did was that pop-up one. And so, yeah, I think I'm up to doing some savory ones. Salty and sweet is another thing that I'm trying to work on. And it's hard because, when I'm using fresh things and making things from scratch, it's, how do I replace, certain things like corn syrup. Like I try not to use corn syrup in a lot of things. That's why I make my own, marshmallows. How do I do things in replacement of it? And, how can I recreate something savory that is maybe not like potentially hazardous to like, like can be kept out for a while. It's like a lot of things that you have to play around with. And, and I just don't want to I try to think out of the box a little bit. I don't want to do maple bacon. I don't want to do, because, and honestly, like, I feel like I have my donut shops here that I go for specific things. Like I have a donut shop that I go for apple fritters, and I have a donut shop that I go for glaze. And so, and that's how I feel about my shop too, is I feel like there's room for everybody. I think they'll come for what they want from my place, but I would love it, for them to go other places. I think that's the beauty of it. It's like the food community is so connected right now that, I feel very supported right now. And I feel very, thankful that like I started a business and all these other donut restaurants near me are reaching out to me and checking up on me, and, we're collaborating and we're brewing things together. And so I think that it's a great time right now. I feel like this is how it should be,
Cool. So you mentioned, you do baked and fried. I've always wanted to know this question. Does an air fryer work well when doing your own donuts?
I actually haven't done, you know what? No, I probably won't. It might do it. Actually the air fryer probably works for the baked from what I heard. I heard it baked.
Okay.
Stuff. Yeah.
Okay. All
so
right.
I'm pretty sure you can bake them.
Yeah, we use air fryer for pretty much everything, but like, we try to do our own French fries. It doesn't turn out quite as well as using the deep fryer.
I actually don't have a deep fryer.
Okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. So, that's the next thing I want to get to. So, you've been in the donut game for a very long time, either as a consumer or a professional. So if one person wanted to become a connoisseur of donuts, either normal or gourmet, maybe what are the top three things they should know when, looking for donuts that they will appreciate?
I think freshness of a donut. I always go right in the morning at any donut shop, like as soon as the morning hits, I feel like that's the freshest.
Those are the best, man. Piping hot off the thing. Yeah.
I know. I don't know, the three things. I just like, if they have a good standard glazed donut, I can pretty much trust that most of the donuts are pretty good. So if their standard glaze is like top notch, I'm pretty sure everything else is pretty good so far. Fresh in the morning. I avoid 24-hour places, donut places. That's about it. Yeah.
So would you say if a donut place does not have glaze, then that should be like, kind of like raise your red flag? Because like everyone should have glaze, right?
I don't have a glaze. I don't have glaze yet because I want to make sure that I can be right. But I think freshness. I think for me, I feel like I can tell when a donut shop is using like old oil or not cleaning out their oil. Like I totally can tell. You can tell. I think it's like a little bit greasier or things like that. And then I feel like honestly, every donut shop that I've been to, honestly, has been pretty good. Like I can find one thing that I like at a donut shop. You know, I'm not too snobby with my donuts. So I appreciate the crafts. I appreciate it all. So I'm always finding the good out of something. You know, I'll always find a donut that I'll like. So.
Okay. So I don't know if you've read the book, The E-Myth.
The what?
It's called the E-Myth. So the
E-Myth, yeah.
Yeah. So if you've read it, it's like, you know, it's actually about a person who makes pies.
Okay.
And them actually, you know, they're a good pie maker, but are they a good business owner? Right. And so let's talk a little bit about, you know, you mastered your craft in making donuts. How has the transition been from, you know, baking donuts for your friends and family and maybe, you know, a side business, but now full-blown business? Right? What things have you learned along the way? It's like, oh, this is not just about making donuts. I got to make money. I got to make sure I charge enough, and all things like that.
Yeah. You know, so my background has been customer service for a long time. So business is really important, has always been really important for me, you know, and as a consumer too, you know, like when I walk into a business, like, or at a store or whatever, like the first thing is like, how is their customer service? Because I feel like that kind of changes how you feel about the product. And so that's what I kind of always, when I started this business, I wanted that first, you know, I wanted to create that experience first. And I have a friend who's helping me right now. Her name is Calvina, and she's like a photography branding, you know, and she's really helped me figure out my voice in the business, which I, you know, already started when I was doing the branding stuff. But, you know, as I've been working on it, you know, what the donuts are a plus for me, right? For my customers, but I think the experience is what they're looking for, you know? And so how do I create that experience for people? You know, how do I, you know, when I meet people, how are they viewing me? Not my product, like how am I portraying myself and how am I portraying this business? And so, you know, and also, you know, all the back end stuff, costs, you know, I want to do all these things from scratch, you know, but how much am I worth? How much is it worth? You know, at the end of the day, like, is my time getting paid for? Is like the top notch quality, like ingredients are getting paid for? And, you know, so there's a lot of stuff, like there are some products that I won't make because it costs way too much, you know? And so I just have to be mindful. As much as I want to stand out and put myself out there, I have to be true to myself. You know, I have to be true to the business as well. And I think that a lot of the customers understand that. You know, and, you know, as a business owner, I just, at the end of the day, I want them to remember me, you know, and my story and why the business is there. And then they get a donut. It's like a plus, you know, and so I feel like that's important. I think that will carry the business a little bit better than me just selling donuts and me just trying to hustle donuts all day long, you know? And I think that's the reason why I'm kind of just comfortable with the pop-up method currently, you know, because I think the hustle is just to open a business ASAP, like open a storefront ASAP. But I don't see that in the future for me. Yeah.
So do you do everything out of your house, or do you rent a commercial kitchen to do, you know, what you need to do?
Yeah. So I do everything out of a commercial kitchen. And, you know, I try to do it as best as I can, like as proper as I can. I try to stick by, I'm a rule follower, so I try to stick by all the rules. And
you got your food handler certificates?
I do. I had that first. I got that first. But, you know, like, I mean, food business is hard. Food business is, I mean, there's a lot of other things that you need to account for, you know. There's a lot of liabilities. There's a lot of, you know, different counties have different codes. And, you know, I just want to make sure that I'm doing everything right. You know, I don't want to have to clean up at the end of the day, you know.
So I think it's sometimes disappointing as the consumer says something is sold out. But I think as a business owner, standing in your shoes is that's good for you guys, because you know there's a demand and you fulfilled all the demand, and you know you don't have to clean up as much, and you don't have to take anything home. So you know, tell us how many pop-ups you did and some of the lessons you learned. Like every time you go, you do one, there's something that you learn, and you go to the next one. Hey, we're not gonna do that thing again, but we're gonna do something else.
So let's see if I had, I started at the end of May and I've only had maybe like 5 or 6 pop-ups. We sold out at every single one. And every single time I double my batch, like I double the and I played around with, do I do pre-order? Do I don't do pre-order? And as much as people like the pre-order, I actually prefer not to do it that way. Because it takes away from my baking time. So everything that I make that day will go towards pre-order, and then whatever's left will be at the pop-up. I'd rather just come fresh with a whole bunch of, all the flavors and just have people pick them out. And so I think that's what I've learned, is that what I like is not the pre-order route. I do, So, I mean, every time I've doubled up on my orders or on my baking, which means I start earlier, so now I start at 2 a.m. in the morning and I try to get done, for whatever pop-up at 9. And so we're like packed up, ready to go. But that doesn't include all the stuff that we do like the week of, it's like a lot of prepping. I make everything from scratch. So I have to make sure I have enough glaze. I have to make sure I have enough toppings. I have to make sure I have, enough boxes, and, we're still doing everything piecemeal. Like we're stamping all our boxes. We're, doing all that stuff. And social media is another thing that is a lot of work, and I appreciate that job now. All those social media people, I totally appreciate, it's a lot of work. And, I've been trying to figure out like what kind of voice I want on my Instagram, because all my businesses ran through Instagram. Like rarely anyone goes to my webpage or anything like that. Everything I do is announced through Instagram, and I think that that's the way of the future now, So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I'm learning still, and then I think about what kind of work-life balance I want too. How busy do I want to be? Is it taking away time from my kids? All those things. And, I'm ramping up and I'm getting busier and I'm getting more popular and people know me now. And so I'm trying to be at ease and not kind of like rush into like, okay, what's the next pop-up I should do? Or, oh man, I should do more. People are looking for me. But I think people know that I'm a mom, and so if I can relate that story with it, I think they appreciate that I'm just taking the time that I need. I'm trying to be as busy as I want to be right now.
Yeah.
Is the model that I want, and I can. So I think that's the beauty of doing it this way.
Yeah. And then it's all important to, for a lot of people who go into business for themselves, they do it for, I think a lot of people do it for the freedom, but they end up working themselves to the bone.
Yeah.
And what I think a lot of business owners mix up freedom for flexibility, right? Because as business owners, we can pick up our kids from school, take them to school. We're not beholden to an office. But when the pop-up's coming up, we got to dedicate extra time, and sometimes maybe we can't pick up our kids on that particular Friday because we've got to go into prepare all the ingredients. You did talk about going into the kitchen at 2 a.m. And I was actually talking to a friend of mine, and she had a girl, maybe about 16 or 17, who said, "Oh, maybe I want to go to baking." And then the mom said, "All right, you want to get to baking? Go work in a donut shop." Same thing, right? You got to get in there 2, 3 a.m. And I think she didn't last very long.
Yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not for everybody, And I think that people who go into the baking business, it's definitely. Yes, it's not as glamorous as people think, like it's it's hard. It's like, I only do like 2 or 3 pop-ups a week, and sometimes I do these special orders and I have to get in super early, and I'm exhausted, and I can't imagine doing this every day. Like I can't imagine it. I'm exhausted, and I think that that's a great way to see if this is for you, because you have to really love it. To be able to do it, it's one of those jobs where, you making really cool things, but the price is like, you talk about the freedom, right? Like the freedom of owning your own business, but my mind is 24/7 thinking about the business, and so there's really not that much freedom, flexibility maybe,
Yeah.
but the freedom is definitely different. You know, it's not as free as you think. So yeah, you know, like I think that it's you got to really love it. You got to really, and people say that about jobs, and I'm like, it is true. This, especially in this one, it's like you got to really, because right now I currently part-time work at a bakery that I've been working for, you know, and I'm helping them out still too, and I'm still getting up 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes there and baking for them too. And so, you know, it's hard to find people that can understand that. Like they get in there and they're like, no, this is not what I signed up for, or I thought I could do it. And it's something that you have to really enjoy doing.
Yeah. So currently, are you a one-person operation?
I am.
Okay.
Yes.
Any plans to add any more people in the future?
I mean, yes, I'm planning. My sister right now is helping me. And you know, I think that right now I'm looking at some college, early college, you know, high school kids that want to help, because I feel like right now they don't, you know, right now I feel like that, you know, it's a good time to, so I want to actually really just train. I have a really like a heart for kids trying to figure it out. I was them too, you know, like so, you know, if there's something that in this baking business that I could help them figure out what they like and what they don't like, then I'm all for it. If this baking thing is not for them, at least they tried it, you know, but let's see, like, what do you think you're good at? You know, I feel like there's other things that you can learn working in a job that you don't like, you know what I mean? And so I just want to provide opportunity for people. But yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, it's not like I open every day. So we'll see.
So after your customers eat your donuts, does your sister do their teeth cleaning for the cavities?
No, actually, you know what? You should ask her, because her dentist buys the donuts a lot.
Yeah, it's like a circular. It's like the dentist who gives out like those King candy bars at Halloween. Is like, oh, come visit me or something, right?
Yes, I know. You should ask her, Dr. Paul. You should answer this question.
All right. So, if you're willing to disclose, what's coming up on your menus, if you can share.
Well, I just came up with something that I was really proud of. Something that I've been thinking from day one was, how do I make this dessert that I've had, you know, jebab, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it since day one, like, how can I recreate this thing? And I just released the flavor this Saturday, and the response has been like amazing. Like, I knew that it was good, but people, and you know, so it just made me feel like, oh gosh, you know, all that time of me just trying to brew over this one simple flavor and how to get it just right, like paid off, you know. And so that's one thing. I don't have anything that I'm thinking, there are some things I'm just trying to figure out. It's hard. I make everything from scratch, so it's
so for that particular donut, like how do you sell it? Because you don't sell it as jebab donut, right? So
no.
like sweet corn donut, or how do you?
I call it a coconut sweet corn donut.
Okay.
Which is pretty much what it is.
Yeah. All right.
And so awesome. People love it, and so it's probably gonna be on the regular, on my regular menu. So.
Okay. Yeah. So we're kind of at the end here. We're gonna do some rapid fire questions, but before I get that, are you only local to PDX? Can you ship your donuts?
No, can't ship it.
Okay.
I know. Only PDX. So if you visit, just look for us on Instagram.
Okay. All right. So as we wrap this up, I'm gonna do some rapid fire questions. So just answer the first thing that comes in your head.
Oh gosh. Okay.
All right. Who do you look up to?
My parents.
Okay. What's the best advice anyone's ever given you?
The best advice I got was, there's room for everybody in this business, in any business. Like, you don't have to be, and my husband probably gave me the best one. It was like, you don't have to be the first. You just have to be better.
Yeah, there's a saying, you don't want to be a pioneer because those people have the arrows in their backs.
Yeah. So.
All right. What's the best book you've ever read?
You know, the best books that I've read is all from Brene Brown that have really helped me personally and work. So.
Okay. All right. If you had to do one thing over again, what would it be?
Maybe start earlier.
Earlier. They say the best time to planting a tree was
Yesterday.
20 years ago, and the
Yeah,
second
yeah.
best time is today.
Hmm.
All right, and then finally, what's the biggest challenge in your business today?
I think the biggest challenge for me is to just try to continue to stay true to me and, kind of go with my gut instead of going with what I see is going on the outside. I just stay true to how I feel, the pace that I'm going, and not rush it, I think. So,
Awesome. Thank you very
yeah.
much for your time,
Thanks,
Lisa.
Dan.
If you follow her on Instagram, HeyDayPDX, and if you are in the Portland area, make sure you attend one of her pop-ups and get one of her donuts. I got in our macarons where she was baking school, so
Oh, yeah.
I can attest to her baking skills. So again, thanks again for your time. And the
Thank
next time
you.
I'm up at Portland, I'm gonna surely stop by and pick up a couple dozen.
Yeah, please do.
All right. Thank you again.
Thanks.